Okay, don't overthink this. What comes to mind when I say the word plastic surgeon? What do you think? Are you anti? Are you adjacent? Are you allied? Are you just plastic surgery curious, which is totally what I am? All of your questions will be answered today. Technically, maybe not all of them. So think of your questions now that you would really love to ask a plastic surgeon. Maybe were you sitting next to them at a party with your glass of wine, although I'm having a whiskey cocktail if the bar is full of whiskey. And you get to that moment when you're going to ask the doctor a question, even though you know you probably shouldn't, but you're going to ask it anyway. What is that question? I want you to think of that one. And I have one too that I didn't ask, but I'm going to save mine and I'm going to tell you at the end. My guest today is Dr. Sam Lamb. He graduated from Cistercian here in Dallas, valedictorian. He's Princeton and Columbia educated. He's double board certified facial, plastic, and hair restoration surgeon with over a decade of specialty training. He's internationally recognized expert and author, contributor of 10 plus textbooks and 250 papers. He's an artist, and he's known for creating natural, timeless results that blend science and art. And the reason why I think this is important, because if we as business owners and leaders are constantly striving to grow and connect with our clients and get more sales, then how we look matters. They've formed an impression on us in 7 seconds before we even open our mouth. There's a study that found that women who wore makeup got 30% more sales. Now, makeup is not plastic surgery, though. How far are you willing to go? Let's talk about it. But before we do, I want to talk about Gibb Insurance Services. This is our agency. We're an independent insurance agency here in Texas. And we're always trying to do better and serve our clients better, which is why this podcast is important. It's hard being a business owner, y'all. And for those of you out there who are doing it too, we're right there with you. Our insurance tip this week is about the 2-week discount. Maybe you don't know this, but if you quote your policies 2 weeks out, you can get a discount based on that time frame. So for our realtors and mortgage referral partner friends, if you know that client might be really tight and getting them across the line is going to be tough, definitely reach out to us with plenty of time so we can get that 2-week discount for you and get that house sold and closed. And now, on with the show.
Thank you so much for being with us today. On the show with me today is Dr. Lamb. And since our whole season is about mindset and how we show up, how we look when we show up, having a plastic surgeon on the show seems like a great opportunity. Tell everybody what you do.
Thanks, Susanna. I'm so glad to be here. So I'm a facial plastic surgeon and a hair surgeon as well, hair transplant surgeon. I also do a lot of non-surgical treatments as well. So really just cosmetic enhancement of the face and neck area, including the hair.
How did you decide when you were going through med school that this was the path?
You know, it's a long, circuitous route. I'll tell you, being raised in an Asian family, there are certain elements that they tell you must go this pathway. And so I've actually started as a history major. And my mom had said, "You're going to be a professor." I said, "Well, I love history." And fortunately, you know, Steve Jobs talks about connecting the dots backwards. And I've written 12 textbooks, and it's by virtue of being a history major. And then I was going through my head and neck surgical residency. And during that time, I just was bored with doing the same procedures over and over again. And at heart, I'm an artist. And I saw this very patrician gentleman come in, talk about rhinoplasty. And I just thought, this is what I want to do. I was just inspired by this mentor. And I remember my mom, as a good Asian mom, said she was walking through a grocery store and said she saw this fake woman, says, "My son is going to give up real medicine and do this ugliness." And she was my office manager for many years, and she saw, wow, no, he's not doing fake work. He's doing beautiful work. And so it was just sort of this amalgam of looking at art and science and passion.
I did see on your website that you are a painter?
Yes, I paint every day.
Paint
7
every
days a
day.
week.
So it is interesting that the art, how do you have tons of conversations with people about what is the definition of beauty?
It's a tough one, right? Because there are industry standards, there's cultural standards, there are, the people say it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I can go to a museum and like 1% of the art is out there. So there's definitely a subjective concept of art. And I think there are certain things that are maybe that are more definitive. And so at least when you cross over to my world, which is the professional world, I think the one thing is it's got to look natural. And if it doesn't look natural, if it's actually visible, you can actually see it, that's not beautiful.
Do you feel like, since you are the historian as well, does the standard of beauty, the natural beauty, do you think that's going to last if you look back and the trends of beauty from the 90s or even the 80s, the 90s and 2000s, and now we are like, it is supposed to not look so
Right.
fake, and
Yeah.
but do you think that'll
I
change?
think, I think naturalness, big lips, big cheeks, big fake things were in. Even when they were in, it wasn't in my practice because I can't stand it. So I don't follow those trends, but there are certain trends that are there. For example, there was a lot of overplucking in the past of eyebrows, and now eyebrow transplantation is a huge part of my practice because people want thicker eyebrows. And will that change? Could be. I mean, so there may be some small changes. I think part of the cultural standard in the past was more white dominated, and now there's a biracial and multi ethnic type of appearance. And the one thing I don't want is an Asian person look white or a white person look Asian, but to represent sort of the beautiful enhancement of that. I mean, a larger historical context is, you look at the Tang Dynasty, there were large bellies and there were, slant eyes and things like that. And that's from that larger historical element, I think you're not gonna see that in short time periods. And those things probably are not gonna be manifested anymore because we've really become a cultural amalgam where everything has become, partly influenced by the Asia, partly influenced by the West, and those are good things. I think there is a multicultural appreciation, and those changes are real. But I don't think drastic changes are anymore a part of it. And now, a huge trend is people are more accepting of surgery in the last 5 years because the results are so natural. And people are realizing that fillers are just not going to cut it. And so that's a huge trend.
Did you ever see that movie, Apocalypto by Mel Gibson?
No, I haven't seen that.
There's a scene it's set in Mexico, 1600s, 1700s maybe.
Yeah.
But there's a scene and they're going through the city and they get to the very wealthy women of the city, and the style of the time is they're blue and they have the very distorted earlobes, and they've just got a lot of facial
You sure that wasn't
modification.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
So, but it is interesting to think about the trends of this time.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is going to last now?
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to be doing in 10 years that you look back and go, oh gosh, that was so 2020.
What's funny? About 10 years ago, I actually had a friend of mine who was interviewed for the Dallas Morning News, and they asked her the exact same question, and she said it hasn't been invented yet. I thought that was a pretty profound comment because honestly, there are things that I do today that I didn't do 5 years ago or 10 years ago because simply there was an advancement of either surgical technique or technology. So we have this, if you look at the Jetsons or you look at what we think of, space.
Well, our flying cars, that's all I want to know.
Exactly. You look at, Space Odyssey 2001 or whatever things, it's, or even Back to the Future. Would they predict that we're going to have a phone that we can use and scan something or whatever it may be? No. So we have a very myopic view of the future. And I think for us to predict it is also myopic. So I would say I would withdraw my ability to predict it, and I would predict that I can't predict it.
So, how do you feel about if people come in and they say, Dr. Lamb, what do you think I should do? Does that offend you? Or do you feel like, because my hairstylist is like, I don't want that.
I love it.
Oh.
So as an artist, I love it. And so I sort of liken it to, like, let's say it's a contractor walking through a home. He sees things you don't see. Okay. I don't see. And he's going to say, that thing is not level and this, and I want that contractor to tell me what the problem is because he does this day in, day out. And so it's funny. Let me backtrack for a second. About 20 some years ago, I was giving a lecture And I was following this very well-known person who was at the time about 80 years old. And he said, give a patient what they want, not what they need. Because if you give them what they want, if you give them what they need, and that's what they really wanted, they're going to be very upset at you afterwards by doing something they didn't even ask for. And I got up in my little arrogant self and I said, you know what? Give them what they need because you have the fiduciary or the judgment, you have the knowledge that they don't have, and you can guide them on things they never thought about. So I truly love the ability to help guide you. That's why I mentioned a facial financial advisor, but it doesn't mean I have to impose it. It just means, hey, I would love to give that value.
I think it's interesting that you talk about medical advancement.
Yeah.
My daughter got a tooth pulled yesterday. She's got the laughing gas. She's
Yeah.
fine. She's so comfortable. And I think about what a different experience that must have been, before 150 years ago?
My goodness.
Even though, no, 100 years ago without all of those things.
Right.
So I want to go back to, you talk about what you won't do because you said, no, I'm not going to do the big stuff. If people come to you and they say, Dr. Lamb, I want this, and you think this is a terrible idea, what do you do?
So there's the discretion. So part of it is I always say I don't treat cancer or heart disease. So this is like a menu it's elective. So if it's something that I think I divide things and I tell my patients this: green light, yellow light, red light. Okay, it's the easiest way to describe it. Green light means this is where you should spend the money. Yellow light means, okay, you want this. To me, it's not going to give you much aesthetic benefit or social professional influence. But if you want it and you have the budget for it and you don't accuse me of wasting your money because that's really what you want, I will take care of it. And I'm going to put a caveat on that in a second. And then there's red light, which is no way in heck. Like it's not going to work. In fact, of anything, I had a lady last year that was someone that was referred by another patient of mine. She says, yeah, I referred this person and she was so upset. I said, oh, I think I know who it is. So she came in for fat grafting and I just said, your lips are a little full. And I'm not saying, hey, you look like a freak. I just, I said I could dissolve down a little bit if it's a little overfilled. I don't know if you know that. And she literally got up and left. Okay. And to me, that's perfect because not that I would ever want to upset a patient or a referring patient, but I always tell my patients, look, the only patient that I don't want is someone that looks fake and wants more fake because it's not going to be a good relationship. It'll be a disaster. So I get to choose the patient as much as the patient gets to choose me. So the caveat on the yellow light is what I try to help my female patients, and hopefully this is not coming out negative, but women see little flaws. And so the other problem is not that it won't help them, is that if I can't see it, I can't fix it. And so sometimes there's a little crease here, there, and I'm like, okay, well, if that's the end point, and even though I probably could improve it, if that's what they want, I may be spending $10,000 and there's not a good enough difference.
Right.
So that's the other small caveat there.
You mentioned societal and professional benefit. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I call it a right brain result versus a left brain result. And so being an artist, we all understand what right brain is. Left brain, of course, if you're not delivering the exact things, is going to look like a bad right brain result. So technically bad facelift, technically bad blepharoplasty will obviously translate in a bad right brain result. So what I try to have my patients understand is, if you are happy, a lot of people say, well, look, I'm coming in because I want to be happy. And what I want to sort of predicate that concept is to say, okay, well, if you look a little better, but no one on planet Earth can see you're better, that may not make you feel so great. However, let's take it for something else. Let's say that I do something and it may not have been on your menu list, but it said, look, here it is. And all of a sudden you're getting 5 to 10 compliments a month, but they don't know what it is. They're not saying, oh, nice rhinoplasty. They're just saying, hey, your skin looks good or whatever it may be.
Did you get a great night's sleep?
Yeah,
You
it
look
is.
so refreshed.
You can't help but feel good.
Yeah.
Okay? If someone says you spent $20,000 with me and they constantly say, man, you look tired. What's wrong with you? You're going, oh, that doctor. So for me, it's about counseling. So I also I have another expression. I'm your facial financial advisor because what I'm trying to do is guide you. I don't force or compel you. The only categories not allowed is fake. But if you want to spend money that it's in a way that I don't think is the wisest, I think it's going to make a big difference. As long as you understand, I may not make an impact for you, but that's what you want, I'll let you do it. But and if I guide you here, I say, hey, you know what, this would really be helpful for you. You go, not my interest, not my cup of tea. Good, no problem. We don't need to go there. But at least if you know, I always say if there's sea bass and there's filet mignon and you're a vegetarian, well, I didn't know there was sea bass. I may want to eat a fish. I want to show you what's on the menu.
Right. Do you feel like you do a lot of counseling about happiness with people who come in? Like, is some of the reasons why they come in have nothing to do with what they're trying to fix on their face? They're really trying to fix this other thing.
It's a good question, and I can tell you that I love my mentor saying is happiness comes from within. You can't help someone being happy. So what's interesting is when I look in their eyes, if I see sadness or they're not making eye contact with me or they're very drained and they're trying to seek plastic surgery or cosmetic enhancement to help them in their life, it will do nothing of the kind. So you have to have an innate sense of self-worth and happiness. You're not going to get it with cosmetic surgery. And if you have it, I can just take you to another level. And it's a gradation issue. And I can see it in the eyes. I can see it in someone's soul when they come in. And it's just not training, it's just experience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we talked about previously was some of the differences between what you might advise a man versus a woman.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, for women in our society, a more youthful face and youthful physique, whatever, is generally always applauded because it's associated with fertility, sexual attraction, and things like that. With men, it's much more complicated. And so with men, the usual categories I look at for men are if they're gay or if they're straight. And a lot of times, being gay, there's a younger aesthetic for men. Are they with a much younger partner? Are they trying to seek a advancement in their career, or are they with much younger people? Are they a CEO of a company where they really shouldn't look that young? Here's just a great example, just to make it concrete. I had a 30-year-old gentleman, very attractive guy, and he came in for Botox. And I asked him, I said, look, I'm not trying to be offensive to ask your orientation, but are you gay or straight? He says he's straight. So I said, okay, here's if I can help you with this. I don't think you need your wrinkles removed. I think the wrinkles, the little bit of wrinkles you have actually make you look good. If you absolutely want it, I'll do it for you, but I don't think it will enhance you in the social realm if that's what you're doing it for. Most people are. So I developed a technique in the last decade called mesobotox, which permanently, I did it for my own skin. It changes the pores, texture, tone, very safe on all skin types. So I said, there's a fertility aspect that women are attracted to. So if I can make your skin look healthy and radiant, you will look more attractive to a woman if that's your end goal. But if I knock out your wrinkles, it may not be the case. And so I say with men, there's like a bell curve where men look a little bit better with aging and then they look worse. And so where I try to figure out is where is the top of that bell curve? For some men, if they have a much younger partner, maybe here. If they're gay, maybe here. If they just thought they looked better here, then that would be there. But I'm here to guide them with that. Or I had another example, the opposite. I had a gentleman who married to a woman relative same age, CEO, very famous CEO, doing very well. I was doing Botox with him and getting his wrinkles better. But then I thought, I think there's too few wrinkles now. We need to back off for at least 9 months. And because I don't think it aesthetically looks the best for him, given his field. So that's the kind of judgment I sort of layer into it. I don't force anyone. He says, look, I want more Botox. Okay, I don't think it's going to make you look fake, but I don't think it's the best use of funds, and I don't think it's going to make you look the best.
Interesting. How do you feel like has the hair technology changed a lot?
It has. It has and it hasn't. It's a long answer, so I try to make it as brief as I can. So the biggest evolution in the field is FUE, which everyone wants. And not to brag about that, but I've written the only major textbook in the world on this subject, which is harvesting hair from the back of the head,
Yes.
like this. So very,
Which
very,
is sometimes successful and sometimes not.
it
right?
it really has to do with, man, this is such a long answer. I want to compress it because we don't have time for it. So I will tell you, ethics, safety are so huge. Let me just touch upon that and then technology. So very briefly, because I think the guys out there need to hear the safety issue. Young men right now getting transplantation is a real problem because it's a supply and demand issue. What that basically means is there's a limited supply and there's an increasing demand and decreasing supply. And unlike economics, you never want your supply and demand curves to cross. What that means is you always will have to have enough supply for the future to fix future demand. And so if you run out, you're going to have a fake result. you're going to have a disaster. And so if a 25-year-old male coming into me wants a transplant, I would most likely 99% of the time not do a transplant on him. I would be looking at medical therapy to slow down loss and really try to help that. Let's take a 65-year-old guy on the opposite extreme. I may not even offer medicine. If he's got good donor, we're doing a transplant no matter how bald, because I know I've seen his prediction. So that's a quick word on safety that I can dive for hours on. Technology, without going through the whole history of technological breakthroughs, the biggest one came in 2017. Now, it's crazy, as my first edition of my FUE book came in 2016, immediately outdated in 1 year. Think of a trumpet, okay? So a trumpet has a sharp end and has a blunt end. Before 2017, the devices were either sharp or dull and caused a lot of trauma to the graft. With the hybrid punches developed by Devois and Trivellini, both really good friends of mine, this allows you to cradle that graft with a blunt end, but cleanly cut it sharply. That is a 1,600-page book summarized in 2 sentences that I really don't want to go too much deeper because it's so deep. I could go into this.
What percentage of your surgeries or your business are you doing for hair?
50-50. Yeah, it is. So
Do you think that men are increasingly expected to have better hair because it's so more common?
Yes and no, because, men can shave their head now, like Jason Savin. So it's, and so what's interesting is, 30% of my transplants are in women. People don't know that. And
No, I would have never guessed.
absolutely. And women, I have a very low threshold to jump in and do surgery. And the reason is they don't go completely bald. And they're not going to shave their head. So I have a built-in safety factor there. And so with women, if I find the right candidate, which in a nutshell is that they're stable and I've got okay donor, I don't have to have spectacular donor, but if I can say I'm going to target it here, here, and here, that's a win. So I do a lot of men. Don't get me wrong. I still have the vast majority of my practice, but I do a lot of females.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's not what I would have expected.
I know most people don't.
So I saw this picture recently. I had 2 that I wanted to talk to you about.
Sure.
One was the Kardashians.
Yeah.
I saw a side by side of what they looked like initially and how much they've changed, but it was so gradual, you don't really notice the difference. What do you think about? What do you think about the Kardashians
Yeah. So I
and
think
that level of
so this,
success for
yeah,
their face?
yeah, it's totally. So it's interesting. You can look at it 2 ways. So first of all, it's great surgery, and so that's what really it is. It's fantastic surgery because, the mistake over the last decade was people thinking fillers could solve it all, and it just simply cannot. And fillers are great and in very tasteful, judicious fashion, which is a whole nother hour of discussion as well.
Yeah.
Can be done really tastefully and beautifully, but there are certain areas that are problematic, like around the lower eyelids, there's migratory issues. I've actually had to abandon that technique years ago because of this. But the summary is that the surgery by good surgeons has led to fantastic results. The flip side, and we chatted a little about this before, is how young is too young, right? Because, we can go very youthful on the face. And is that something that should a 70-year-old woman look 30? I don't know. I mean, this is a difficult question, right? So there's these standards of beauty now that are becoming harder and harder. I had a lady a few years ago, I think I mentioned this when we chatted briefly, that she says, it's not ferret anymore. I said, what do you mean? And she said, everyone's doing Botox now. Everyone's doing this and I have to do it now. And there is a level where it's become democratized where, you don't have to be super wealthy to do it. But for the levels that you're seeing, there is a more costly aspect to get that level of rejuvenation. Is that right or wrong? That's a cultural question that's not easily answered,
The other question I saw, which leads into the Botox, it had a smattering of pictures of both men and women, and it was, well, the women of the golden, what am I trying to, I am
Golden girls.
Thank you. Yes. Who are a lot of them in their 50s. Yeah.
Totally.
And then the men were also in their 50s, and it had like Mr. Roper from,
from Three's Company.
and they were in their 50s, but
Yeah.
they looked 20 years older.
Totally. Yeah.
And how much the preventive Botox has changed how we age.
Right. And I think one thing I would like to communicate to the audience out there is the power of Botox healing. So this is a concept people don't get. And I think it's something that I explain every day with this shock and awe when I talk to a patient. People think Botox is a temporary thing that only lasts a few months, but it actually cumulatively heals the skin. So there have been double-blind prospective randomized studies looking at even like a thyroid scar where one side is placed with Botox, the other side with saline or salt water. And the double-blind patient and the doctor doesn't know which is which. They do it at a week. At 6 months, the side with Botox is invisible. And so people don't understand the permanent aspect of Botox. If you look at my Instagram account from Friday, I showed my skin 2 years after one treatment of meso Botox, a dilute Botox that I spent a decade perfecting. Doesn't paralyze the face, doesn't treat wrinkles, it's for texture. So even if you, and I showed this photo, welcome to Google this, out of Michael Douglas at a sports event, and his forehead looks flawless, but the rest of his face doesn't. And it's because he's probably done 20 years of consistent Botox. So whether we like it or not, Botox heals insanely well and sometimes too much. And so what I try to do with Botox is heal all of the skin in the neck, chest, even if I don't do a facelift, it's not going to lift anything. I'm trying to treat the molecular structure of the skin in a very favorable way.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
What else you're doing with Botox? Can you talk a little bit about it?
I'm working through a patent right now, so I am working through things that I can't fully reveal, but I'm working with chronic pain, TMJ migraines, but in totally different ways with emotional issues, depression, issues with neurodegenerative diseases. What I've invented is going to change medicine.
How?
All of medicine, every fundamental element of it, and anyone who's a physician will have the ripple effect of this within 5 to 10 years.
You also mentioned IBS, which I'm personally interested in.
Yeah.
It's probably the least cool name of anything I've ever heard ever.
Yeah.
Which I don't know who came up with naming it, but they
don't.
like just even the last name, for heaven's sake, call it somebody's name versus irritable bowel syndrome. It's the worst. But everybody has it. And
So I tell you, I've combined Eastern and Western medicine in certain respects. I'll tell you a story. So I had a dinner with a family friend and the family, and I asked her, I said, how's your daughter doing? She had IBS, and she, I don't know. I said, well, the fact that, first of all, you don't know is pretty amazing because you've told me from age of 3 to 20, she's been hospitalized every month for this. And so the daughter finally came in like a week later for migraines, which is what I treat differently from what's standard. And I just said, how are you doing? I'm curious about your stomach. And she says, no, I haven't had it for 2 years. And this is a woman that was hospitalized every month for her whole life. So this is severe. And so that's something I've been looking at. Really, the easiest way to understand what I'm working at is your body healing itself rather than my directing it. You direct itself. And this is looking at sort of meridian channel points that are melded with releasing using Western technology. It's really, and a lot of it's immediate.
so what kind of Eastern medicine are we talking here?
It's like acupuncture, but totally different. It is actually, I've actually discovered so many things. I cannot talk about it on camera.
That's okay.
But it's so far beyond anything Eastern and Western that it's really fun. It's really life-changing. The things that I'm seeing. A great example is a driver. I just tell you some stories. Like this driver who his mother had what's called hemibolisma. So 90 years old, she's like this, and it was caused by some medicine that she took. And so he came in, I treated her, and he says, "Look, if you can fix her, I'll give you anything." So I treated her 2 years ago, and I said, you know what? My family wants to go to Europe before me and they want to be picked up with the kids. And I said, okay, I'm going to just text them and say, hey, how's your mom doing? Would you just do this? Just give me a free ride to back. We'll call it even. So she says, yeah, his mom is still doing amazing. She had 2 caregivers full time, couldn't walk. It's gone. She can needlepoint and drive at 90 now. I'm not saying she should drive at 90. I'm just saying she does drive at 90 where she couldn't even walk down the street. So these are some of the cool stories that I'm working with right now that are really transformative beyond just cosmetic enhancement.
See, it's so interesting. I have a Reiki lady that I've seen for forever. And so I took courses to become a Reiki master. And my husband's like, what are you doing with that? And I'm like, I use it all the time, but not on necessarily anybody else. And science can't explain a lot of it
Yeah.
yet, but I'm fascinated about when they might be able to explain energy and being able to heal yourself and
Crazy stuff.
getting your body to heal itself.
Yeah.
So, tell me about a couple other things because everybody's always fascinated about what are some of the new things that you're seeing? What are some of the new trends that, like, where how you were talking about the Botox healing the skin? I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a trend that I'm actually creating these trends because honestly, no one else is really doing it. So I spent a decade perfecting the dosing because essentially with Botox, what you want is the healing effect on the skin without the paralysis, and then you want to minimize bruising time. So I've spent literally a decade reformulating this so that I don't get the paralysis, the toxicity. I just get this skin healing effect. And so that's something that is not really a trend in the market. It's a trend that I'm developing and really people fly in for this. So that is something very, very unique. The other thing is not really a trend. It's not something I invented, but I call it microdose fillers. Away from the migratory, massive, overfilled look is managing creases down the face, little creases now near the mouth. Instead of dosing it with large volumes, I'm micro treating it, and I'm getting these insanely good results with less than a syringe. I rarely use more than one syringe. So that is something is not really a trend. It's just something that I really have uniquely been doing that very few people in the United States do. And then when I've told you about some of these other treatments, in fact, when I use these therapeutic elements that I call Theracross that I'm using for all these different ailments, I'm actually using it for my patients postoperatively. So on literally day one, if you've got nausea, sore throat, discomfort, pain, it's gone immediately. So that's not part of it. But the big trend I would say honestly right now in the world of face is more surgery, which is so counterintuitive to what it was a decade ago. It really has migrated due to the fact that things look so much more natural.
So, what do you mean more surgery?
So more facelifts, more fat grafts, blepharoplasties,
I
things.
see a lot of people getting their this lid thing done. I
Uh,
can't remember what that's called though.
blepharoplasty.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Blepharoplasty, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a different philosophical perspective of blepharoplasty than probably what is common out there. There's a lot of brow lifting. There's a lot of over sculpting eyes. And I don't think it necessarily represents how they used to look. And so when I ever say that and someone says, oh, by the way, I've got a photo of me when I was 30, I said, okay, look, I haven't even seen your photo. I'm going to play a little magic trick for you. I can almost guarantee how you looked when I before I even look at the photo, and then I say it, and they look and they go, "Oh, you're right." So a big part of it is blepharoplasty for me. I don't do a ton of brow lifts because I don't think people need very high brows. I do a very conservative skin removal only when necessary. The two mainstays that have become a huge part of my practice is fat grafting, or if someone has a hollower eye, I'm rebuilding it with a little bit of
Top or bottom?
both. Not into the anterior cheek. That's the no-no zone. And then I do a little bit of ptosis. So ptosis is basically, I'm 56, my eyes are a little bit narrower, and it's not just because I'm Asian, but also because they just don't open as much as we get older. And so I can do an internal incision to try to, in other words, not on the skin, and I can make the eye just open a little bit.
Oh,
And so I think these are things that are not trends in the market. These are trends that I am doing because I'm seeing a deficit in the market where I think people are leading people in a way that's not necessarily fake, but suboptimal. And I just posted, sorry to promote this guy. I just posted today as 82-year-old lady. You think, why are you working on 82-year-old? She had scars down her face from not scars like on the skin, but underneath the skin, lumpiness from a bad blepharoplasty, over resected eyes. So what I did was I injected scar dissolvers, got her down, redid her eyes, added fat, did not take any more skin from her, corrected her ptosis, and now she can see better and she looks more attractive and natural and very little recovery time compared to her first procedure. So I don't know what other trends are in the market. For hair, I think honestly, it's the trend of looking at really a lot more women are doing it now. I think it's become more acceptable and celebrity men are doing it younger. But I think again, that trend is a dangerous trend because because I can do a facelift on a 35-year-old. I can do it on a 30-year-old, but there isn't a lot of risk with that. It's the hair where they're doing it too young. And that's a trend that's happening on Instagram that I really try to knock down if possible.
How do you balance? And then this is I'm detouring with
Yeah.
this question, but I wanted to get to it because I feel like some people, and you've probably heard this argument before, and maybe not, but plastic surgery is a form of self-hatred. That we should embrace who we are. This is how we were made.
Right.
And there's always, I think about Jennifer Grey. Do you remember her in
course.
Dirty Dancing? Like
Plus, yeah.
when she got the rhinoplasty, it was like, oh, you were so amazing as this. How do you find the balance? How do you answer that when somebody says, and I don't know if people are that open with you when they're like, that's wrong. People shouldn't do it.
And and so the idea is not to judge someone's decision-making process, because what's right for someone may not be right for someone else's motivation. There can be absolute morality in the world, but I think plastic surgery is one of those things that you have to decide for yourself. I really don't want to impose you. If you come in and give me that line, then don't do it. And I liken this to, as I said with the menu, if you like steak, it's on the menu. If you don't want it, no problem. Is it right to make a woman look more youthful, a man look more youthful? That's a difficult question. And I don't ever want to impose that ethical standard on someone and say you should or shouldn't do it. And Jennifer Craig is an interesting one, because her, part of it is very interesting with rhinoplasty, to talk about that for a moment, is that, she's such a well-known individual and had such a big change that it really did change our impression of her. And it's such a scary example when you see that, right? But at the same time, what's very interesting in the real world, if you take it out of the context of celebrities, and I do these large hump reductions, patients tell me they don't even, and you can watch testimonials on my website, people don't even know I did it. And so it's this being called out as a celebrity that does, because there's this iconic cultural element to Dirty Dancing and all those things, where we affix ourselves to that identity of where she was. And I'm not saying she looks better or looks worse. I mean, by the cultural standard, she's more feminine. Okay, that identity is been taken down. And I can absolutely see, just even from my own aesthetic, looking at that going, yeah, I get it, why someone would be angry at that. And that is a great example to explain that. But in the reality of it, of my working with patients with rhinoplasty, they're happy and they use it till they don't even notice it. Or like when I do a patient that has no hair, and you would think, okay, well, wait a second, I just put hair up there. It must be like a toupee. No, not at all. It looks so natural that people can't tell, and it grows in so slowly that it just becomes who they are, and that's a very different thing. Now, just to talk about a cultural thing, which is very interesting, is if you have a 40-year-old gentleman coming in who's straight, and I'm going to qualify why that's important, is a straight 40-year-old gentleman coming in wanting a rhinoplasty. It is actually culturally, it's actually psychologically more complicated. It's one of the more complicated ones, because men do well if I put hair on their head. They do great if I do a facelift. They do well if they're 25, 22 years old to do a rhinoplasty. But there is this something, and I don't feminize the nose, but it's harder for them to digest when they're 40. And so I do have to do
For
a lot
them or for
them.
people?
No, for them.
Like they don't like
They
the
don't,
result?
they have a harder time adjusting to the change. Yes. Yes, for their own self-identity, but other people identity for them, probably not. So I usually have to tell them, I usually discourage it, or I would do a very, very, very conservative change, or just a functional change, like straighten the nose, take a modest degree of hump down and not do much. Whereas I could take a bald man and put all the hair on his head and be fine. I could take his neck that's sagging and do it. So that's part of maybe a small tangent, a slight tangent away from what you're asking, but in the same time, I think it's interesting.
Do you think people are more open now to say, oh, well, I had this done, versus when Jennifer Grey had it done? It was like a little bit more, I don't know, taboo. Or like when Jerry Jones got his first facelift and he was like, no, I didn't do it. We are like, you obviously did.
Right, and I didn't do it. But, no, but, yes, because people are now proud of it. It's almost like wearing a Chanel bag or whatever,
Because you can afford it.
they can afford it, you look better, and now people on Instagram, they're wanting to post their results, which is interesting. So I think there's a cultural shift. Is that good or bad? I don't know, because, plastic surgery, there is a level of superficialness nature of it, right? So people are doing things that just make them look better. Is that always good? I don't know. It's a tough call. But I love what I do, and I love making people feel good, and I love making people look better. And if it aligns with their budget, and aligns with their values, and it aligns with what I like to do for them, I don't really see a major issue. But it could be sort of like, is it Upton Sinclair that says, tell a man something against the ethics of his business and he will not understand it. And I think that is interesting because maybe I'm blind to my own ethics of doing cosmetic enhancement for patients, but I really love what I do, and I think it's something that gives value to people. So,
Mm, that's lovely. If people want to find you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I mean, they can call my office 972-312-8188, old school, or they can info at lamfacialplastics, lamfacialplastics.com. My hair site is hairtx.com. So those are some things.
Can they connect with you over facial media, or is it better?
Yeah.
I mean, facial media.
No.
There could be facial media, but
Give it 5 years.
yeah.
No, so yeah, we do virtual consults, and it's totally integrated into our electronic medical records. So very easy for me to do. What usually happens is you'll send me photographs before, a little short history of what you're wanting, so I can look at all the angles, and then I just connect by a video, and we're able to chat live.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan.
And
It's an honor.
I appreciate the time that you spent with me today. Feel much more aware.
I'm very appreciative as well. Thank you.
He was such a cool man. I think he probably spends his free time reading medical stories, and I spend my free time trying to find recipes for the tiki bitters that I decided I needed to buy off of Amazon late night. I actually have one really good recipe. It's so good. I will drop it in the socials for you. So my question that I didn't ask is, what does it cost? I am kind of fascinated by this question. I'm constantly playing the Price is Right game in my head. I just want to know what it costs. I may not even buy it. But what does it cost? What was your question? Did I answer it? Drop it in the comments for me below. That's it, you guys. Have a great rest of the week. I hope you land your next big client, close that deal. You got this.